What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Geoff of the almighty Triskelyon. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime, man. Anytime. It's so awesome to have you here. We got the new debut album, Downfall, out right now. This is an absolute killer album that thank you for giving it to us. Was the self-titled EP that you released earlier this year kind of like meant to be like the trailer in a way, or sort of like the preview of what Downfall was in a way? Or was you kind of like separating yourself from how you sort of got your foot in the door with the EP?
Yeah, I think I kind of viewed the EP as like a test kind of thing, like a litmus test to see what would it go like, what would it be like to kind of take on the reins myself, and it's outside of a traditional band setting and more of a project setting, and could I do it myself? And the pandemic kind of thing, you have more time to explore these types of avenues. So that's how it started. And I did the EP and to see how well it would be received, or even what I would think about it. And I was happy with it, and the few reviews we got were all positive. So it inspired me to continue and do the full album, and here we are. The album just came out October 28th, so everything seems pretty good so far.
Hell yeah. Being that you've played with a lot of projects, from everything from Betrayer to Within the Realm to Artak and so many other bands, were you going into Triskelion with a different creative mindset in a way, or is there like a usual method behind the madness that's sort of applied to every project that you play with?
Uh, there is a method, I guess, but specifically when I started this year, I was wanting to separate it a little bit from some of the other things I do. Like you mentioned, Artak, that's more like kind of a epic melodic black metal thing, and then my main band, Category 6, is more of a traditional metal thing. So I kind of view this as somewhere in the middle of that. So it's more, I was aiming for thrash metal, but not thrash metal that's overly brutal. More melodic thrash. So you still have the brutality and the riffs, but try to keep it melodic with most of the vocals. So there's elements, of course, of extreme metal and Black Deaths here and there, but mostly I think it's it falls somewhere in the thrash, traditional thrash kind of realm, kind of thing.
You know, it's a smorgasbord of brutality, you could almost say.
Yeah, without getting to the point of brutality where it's only for extreme metalheads. I think people who like extreme metal probably will find something here they'll like, and fans that are probably more into the traditional side of things might be, this is as heavy as they want to go because it still has some melody and stuff like that. So hopefully it's somewhere in the middle that can appeal to a bit of both.
Mhm. Well, I've always wondered what the term extreme metal is, because I think if you talk to like the average like suburban soccer mom in a way, she would think like Stained or Creed is like extreme metal in a way. So is there like a specific threshold or on the heaviness meter that has to be cracked before it could be labeled as extreme metal?
Yeah, probably. Well, I guess like you said, it depends on who you're speaking to, because your average soccer mom is going to think, Iron Maiden is super brutal. But for someone that listens to metal, I think it starts crossing somewhere around the Slayer mark. It starts going from traditional heavy to it's entering the realm of extremity kind of thing. So I think that would be kind of where I would draw the line. Some of the Slayer stuff becomes pretty extreme and brutal, even though there's stuff, of course, that people would consider more extreme and brutal. But that's where I kind of draw the line.
Fair enough. Yeah, like because then there's people who are only listening to extreme metal, but then they would think like a band like Behemoth is too soft. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as soon as some people hear someone sing anything besides in a growl, they're like, "Oh, that's I don't know, rock or pop, or not metal," because they only want to hear you know all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Being that everybody involved in Triskelion is in different projects as well, does that maybe help like enhance the songwriting in a way? Did that maybe like help influence the different sounds that came through fruition on this, or were you all kind of like trying to distance yourself and step into like uncharted territory?
um, well, I wrote all the songs by myself, but of course, having these different people involved, everyone brings their own kind of sound and style to each of the songs. So their influences and who they are shines through in their performances. But the I guess the nucleus of the song was all me. I wrote the riffs, I wrote the the structure, and then the next person involved was drums through Raul, who did the drum stuff, and then we built upon it from there. And in some of the cases, I wrote all the lyrics too, so I would give the lyrics and the song to one of the vocalists and say, what do you want to do? Sometimes they went off on their own and came back and said, here we go. Or they said, what do you have in mind? So I would probably lay down a very embarrassing vocal take of how I think the phrasing could work over some of the riffs and stuff for them to have a rough guide. But for the most part, I invited them to bring to the table whatever they wanted. If they wanted to come up with the melodies, if they wanted to write lyrics or change the lyrics, then I'm not. I wasn't being a tyrant about it, kind of thing. I wanted their input as much as they wanted to give.
That's a great collaborative effort for somebody who did write, the material. That's great that you were able to let other members bring like their own interpretation and mix behind it. You mentioned that you were writing the lyrics too. Would a lyrical idea maybe help to dictate what the sound of each song would sound like? Was there a time where maybe you had either the full lyrics or just a lyrical idea written that could help influence the sound that we would hear on a specific song?
Um, I think that the song might influence the lyrics a little bit more than vice versa, because I'm not a lyricist, even though I did write the lyrics. I don't view myself as someone who writes a whole lot of lyrics. So I'm a guitar player first and foremost. So I wrote songs and riffs and structures, and then I had to kind of base what I thought a topic might fit something like that. Like, uh, I don't know, say the heaviest vocal song on there is called Indifference. It's kind of got a, creator esque black metal almost vocal style, which is different from most of it. So having that kind of a vocal style and the subject matter of the song being a little more brutal than probably some of the others. So that would influence the vocals in that way, in that regard, I think more so than anything else. And sometimes, you write lyrics just free form. You don't really have like what song it's in mind. You have a topic like, I don't know, like the song Hunger is kind of a bit about wanting change in the world, kind of thing. A hunger for change is one of the lines. And so I just wrote what my thoughts were on how I would like to see the world be a better place, and why are things so divided? Why is everyone so, always button their heads with their left and right extremities of opinions and can't get along, and, those kinds of things. So those lyrics were not written directly with the riff in mind. I just wrote my thoughts down and then had to alter some of the words to fit the phrasing and structure, kind of thing. But the general idea was written separate from like trying to fit it to the music. I don't know if most non-singers write that way or not, but that's how I did it anyway.
Was a lot of whether it would be the lyrics or the music, was this like coming from an emotion that was happening within in your sort of own point of view, or was there a lot of observation and a lot of external sources of inspiration that sort of guided the sound?
I say there's a little bit of both. Of course, the lyrics overall, like the theme of the album, kind of has a loose theme that someone pointed out. It's called Downfall, and it's kind of about where I kind of view the world is heading. It's heading for it. If you're a negative person, which some of us sometimes are, you kind of view the world as heading towards a downfall because of all the problems, because things keep getting worse. So the outside, the news, the things that are going on in the world, that has an impact on anyone who follows current events, and it can make you angry, or it can make you sad, depressed. For me, I just wrote about a lot of those kinds of topics in the lyrics.
And do you want the music to be open to interpretation, or do you want to try to engage the listener into the meaning of each song as much as the music itself?
Um, I'm okay for people to get their own meaning out of it. I'm not, some people could take a totally different meaning out of something that I had in mind, and if that's the case, that's cool. And I'd love to hear what they probably think is about. But even if that's what works for them and it inspires their thoughts in that way, then that's cool. But I don't mind telling people. I don't need it to be this mysterious secret of, oh, what could it be about? Like I wrote most of the songs to be about something specific, but it doesn't bother me if people interpret them differently.
Hmm. When it comes to getting that creative energy for any project that you've been involved in order to get that sort of energy, that impulse to create, do you need to kind of like put yourself in a specific place in order for those ideas to cultivate, or does inspiration just strike out of the blue for you?
Um, for lyrics,
For
it
anything.
takes yeah, for lyrics it takes a little bit of a different mindset and a different um like I have to be in the mood to write lyrics and to think about something. For writing riffs and songs, I really don't have to be in any kind of mood. I just pick up my guitar and I always say to myself, let's just practice some scales or patterns, or let's focus on something to better my guitar playing. And I end up noodling a bit, and I go, gee, that's a great riff. And I go, I wasn't going to write no more riffs. I already got 1,000 in the bank, and now I've got 1,001. So that's kind of what happens. I end up going to play guitar to just practice, and I end up coming up with ideas that I just can't stop coming up with. So that's how the music kind of comes out. But the lyrics are a bit of a different thing because, like I said, I'm not really a lyricist all the time. So just sitting down and forcing myself to write lyrics off the cuff is, you know, not something I can do. If I sat down to do that, it would probably, I'd get a line or two down and have to go back to it, a few days later when I've thought about it a bit more. And then you can write like, almost the whole song in 5 minutes once you've developed your ideas enough. But you can't force, I guess you can't force anything, but lyrics, especially, I find a lot harder to come up with in riffs and stuff.
Hmm. Now, I'm probably asking this question a little prematurely, being that Downfall is still brand new, but obviously this is the debut. There is a lot of rolling of the dice, but can you see yourself in the future for Triskelion maybe utilizing this specific sound in the future, or do you want to maybe further experiment with this extreme sound?
Um, Yeah, well, I've already, like I said, I got a lot of riff ideas in the bank already, kind of thing, ready to work for a second album. And there is definitely going to be a second album because with the Morbin Records, I signed with them for a 2 album deal. So there will be another album. Exactly when, I'm not sure yet, but I'm already thinking ideas. And in terms of how that might sound, I'm not thinking it's going to be radically different from this album. It definitely won't be any lighter. It might get heavier, it might get faster, but overall, I think it's going to be within the same ballpark of what you're hearing on Downfall. Overall, I'm hoping to maybe have a few other guests on the album. I have nothing like officially figured out for that yet, but I'm open to hopefully having a couple other singers maybe involved and seeing what happens.
Hmm. And when you listen to this album, when you go from Hunger to Find a Way to A Time of War to Nobody's Business, it really seems like every song, in a way, had its own elements that did make them stand out, but they all belong on the same record in a way. Was there kind of like, as you maybe made each song and as you started writing for this album more and more, did the making of each song get a little bit easier as you developed sort of like a formula, or did it get a little bit harder as you wanted to try to come up with more new ideas?
Um, no, not really. It didn't get any harder. It was, once you got 3 or 4 songs done, you might kind of scratch your head and say, should I have? Is that enough? Do I have enough songs that are fast enough, or was that song too speed metal or too power metal or too traditional and not thrashy enough? Like I kind of had those kinds of thoughts, but that's as deep as it went because you can't really force force a style of music out in your writing totally. You can try your best to say, well, I should have a song that's more brutal, like the song Odyssey Blessed by Steel is pretty fast and brutal, one of the faster ones. So then I did a couple more that I thought were a little more like the next two after are Willful Ignorance and A Time of War. They're more, I guess, melodic and a little more groovy, a bit speed metal. So then I was kind of like, well, I need something that's kind of like get back to the more thrash elements kind of thing. So you kind of think about your influences and outcomes riffs that sound in the ballpark of your influences. I guess hopefully not a direct rip off of that stuff, but I think people that listen to the same types of music that I grew up with are probably gonna hear a lot of what I grew up with as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you reference Creator, which who I just saw last night, and it was awesome. But like in terms of inspiration, like because I see again elements of thrash, death, black. Again, it's a smorgasbord of extreme metal in a way. Do you have multiple sources of inspiration depending on either what project you're working with or what instrument you're working with in a way?
Yeah, because I have three active projects on the go. Sometimes when I come up with something, I have like my three folders on my computer for those bands. So if I come up with a riff and it sounds like, I don't know, really over the top kind of thing, I go, okay, that's more black metal oriented, so let's put that over in the art tech folder to use later. Or if it comes out and sounds a little more 80s or a little more, classic heavy metal, it's like, okay, maybe that's more for my category 6 stuff. So, and of course, there's bits of those elements that find its way in the Triskelion too, because that's just, the range of stuff I listen to is pretty wide in terms of metal. So,
Mhm.
but I try to keep in mind that, the focus for Triskelion is mostly thrash. But I don't mind if there's elements of traditional metal, power metal, black metal, death metal, all that kind of stuff. It gets in there a bit, and that's fine.
Yeah, and thrash in itself is a fairly diverse genre. Like Metallica to me sounds really doesn't has a lot of different sounds from a band like Slayer, and that has a very different sound from a band like Destruction. So like I feel like that
Yeah.
there's a lot of different elements of thrash that really makes that in itself a fairly experimental genre, and we've seen a lot of crossover with it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't listen too much of the crossover thrash that goes kind of into the hardcore punk realms. Like your DRI and those kinds of bands. I think back to when I was younger and heard. It's good, but it's not the kind of thrash that I gravitated to. I was more into the more melodic end of thrash, I guess, like your Testament and Creator. Even though they're not melodically vocal wise, their riffs and melodies are very melodic. And bands like I don't know, Death Angel are very melodic but still pretty brutal. Those are the kind, even Metal Church, some of their stuff, even though they're kind of a traditional band, they have elements of thrash in their music. So Forbidden, bands like that, I kind of think of that have the brutality but still keep melody in mind.
Yeah, and there's some bands that would never call themselves that, but often get like Judas Priest's Painkiller. I thought was pretty much like thrash before thrash was talked about so much, and then even a band like Armored Saint too. I mean, some people call them thrash metal, some people call them power metal, but whatever the hell you want to call them, it almost seems like thrash always has its essence of crawling into the DNA of a lot of different bands that wouldn't be called that.
Yeah, like even if I tried to write something that was not thrash, a little thrash is going to find his way in there because that's what I kind of grew up. That's how I learned how to play guitar, like turning on Master of Puppets and trying to play along to the entire album, like as a kid, right? Like even though I never learned it all perfectly, that was kind of like how I learned how to play guitar, was playing along to those types of albums. So if I tried to write something that wasn't in that realm of music, there's going to be bits of it show up because it's just so ingrained in my playing and where I came from that I can't escape the thrash. So it was nice to do Triskelion, which is kind of focused on where, for me at least, a lot of my guitar playing started. So
Mm-hmm. For on a technical level for your guitar playing is when we hear these riffs and these solos and that's incorporated in here, is it almost kind of like a reflective of an emotion that you were feeling at that particular time?
um sometimes with solos is a little bit different. Like you can try to create things that are more melodic, or like, I don't know, I think it's Balance of Terror I was kind of going for, more like just kind of rip, right? Not so much shred. I'm not really a shredder. I'm more like, just ripping kind of solos, like, fast and aggressive, kind of like channeling a bit of Slayer, but probably a little bit more melodic than Slayer, those kinds of things. So you channel a bit of anger or something to do those kinds of solos versus more introspective melodic solos that you'd have on some of the other tracks.
Yeah, I never really was a fan of that term shredder because like,
No.
yeah, like okay, like I remember like what makes it a shredder because you could like play 8,000 notes per minute. I mean
Yeah.
that's great, but like
You're shredding notes.
yeah, like it's one thing to make a bunch of notes together, but the solo in itself, you can make. Try to remember like apples and oranges scenario, but "Free Falling" by Tom Petty has three chords the whole song, and that's one of the strongest songs that's still played everywhere you go today. And then there's some
Right.
bands that they write like a 90-minute solo, and it's not very memorable.
Yeah.
So sometimes,
Yeah. I
sometimes,
know.
sometimes I wanted to ask, do you guys get paid by the note or something like that? So,
Yeah, I know. Like that kind of thing, as a guitar player, like I listen to some of those types of shred things, and I'm impressed by it, like from a technical thing, because I don't really play that way, and I just go wow. But after a song, I'm kind of like, yeah, what else do you do besides play 8 trillion notes a second?
Yeah.
I want to hear some melody, and I want to hear stuff besides just, let's see how fast you can play kind of thing.
Yeah, I think one of the best bands that is able to kind of like bridge both together, playing a lot of notes and playing a lot of notes, but also bringing a lot of melody and emotion, is like a lot of those instrumental bands, like Animals as Leaders or Intervals, like a lot of those
Yeah, yeah,
bands, which
technical kind of.
yeah, which
Yeah,
is not thrash at all, but
no,
yep. And
yeah.
the final question I wanted to ask you is, how do you know when you're finished with a song?
Um, I don't really know the answer to that. That's a good question. Well, I know when I'm finished as a guitar player from the song, because I send it to the I record my basic parts to a click kind of thing, and then I get it to the drummer. That's how the songs were done. So how do I know when I'm ready? I don't always know. I send it to him first and say, do you think this is ready? Does it join? Does everything sound good, kind of thing? But I kind of also I'll look at like how long is it? Like if it's like I wanted to keep the songs deliberately not too long on here, so 3-4 minutes is kind of enough to make your point. Whereas some of the other stuff I've done, I've had songs run on into the 8-9 minute thing, and it gets more indulgent. But I was kind of laser focused on just get to the point and don't need to like have 8 verses and 10 choruses or something. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, well, the beauty of those songs is somebody could be 40 minutes late and they make it before it ends. So,
yeah.
but no, I've noticed that in terms of the time length with Downfall, that there is a lot of consistency in terms of the length of each song. I think simplicity did kind of like work in your favor in a way with this, in a way, because it was
Okay.
catchy, it was to the point, it was strong, and it was very technically impressive. But there wasn't too much to digest at once, which I thought is what worked in its favor.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yep.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just
Yeah.
anything else with Triskelion you'd like to promote, like in terms of live shows, or when could we be expecting some more new music in the future?
Well, right now there isn't the plan for live stuff, but it's still a project right now. But as for new stuff, we post on our YouTube and Facebook pages with any videos, or there's a new lyric video out today for A Time of War. So, and as for new music, I'm writing it, so hopefully in 2023 for sure there will be something. And stay tuned.
Looking forward to hearing more. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Triskelion. Be sure to check out Downfall. It is an absolute thrasher piece. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.